Joining us right now on the line is Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, who was nice enough to join us. Mark, I do appreciate you coming back on the show, sir. How are you?
So far, so good. How are you?
Doing okay, Mark. I appreciate you being here. I want to get your first reaction to this video that Pam Bondi released, but yet it's a different camera angle. And as you know, there's 1 minute that's missing from this video angle that was outside your brother's cell when he allegedly took his own life. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, did you get the photographs I sent to you?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Could you put them up? Is that possible?
We will. Yeah, we are going to put those videos up later on in the program. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to do that. But
okay, because my impression was that videos don't show anything.
They don't.
That's real. The pictures I sent you, I have the actual cell door to Jeffrey's cell. I have the picture of the tier that his cell is on, and I have the picture of the entrance to that tier, which is up a bunch of steps. So when I watched the video and they said someone was walking across and they put him into his cell, that's impossible. To get into Jeffrey's cell, you had to go up a flight of stairs into the tier, which has a barred, locked door, and then Jeffrey's cell was to the right of that door. So it's not just a matter of just walking somebody to a door on a flat surface and walking them into the cell. So I don't know what that video was, and the person who was in that video, you can't distinguish who that is. I tried to blow it up as best as I could. You can't see who that is.
Mark, what are they?
I think this is more BS.
Mark, what are they hiding? Why is Pam Bondi and Donald Trump not want to talk about your brother anymore all of a sudden? What are they hiding?
Well, why do they all cover it? Bill Barr started it after Jeffrey's death by stating that because he saw the videotape and nobody went in or out of the tier, that convinced him it was a suicide. Well, there were 12 other inmates on that tier that could have killed somebody, assuming he was killed. Also, to think that somebody could get to that cell, that tier door, go in, kill somebody, and leave completely undetected is just one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Because there's 6 levels of security before you get to that tier, each with its own locked doors and guards and cameras. So when I first heard Bill Barr state that, I said, wait a second, they're covering something up. But I thought about that before then, because when they did the autopsy for Jeffrey, Dr. Roman, who was a city pathologist doing the autopsy, and Dr. Michael Barton was there witnessing it, they came out of the autopsy room saying they could not call this a suicide because it looked too much like a homicide.
Right.
Now, that fact is ignored and overridden on everything they put out. A few days later, Barbara Sampson, who was the chief medical examiner, she calls it a suicide. And that's what they rely on. They say the chief medical examiner called it a suicide. But let me tell you, Barbara Sampson never saw Jeff's body.
Right.
She was not at the autopsy.
Right.
So what information is she basing that decision on? She refuses to speak.
Here's what I don't understand, Mark. You have Pam Bondi, who's talking a lot about Epstein when she first got this job. You have Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, who are talking about your brother constantly 24/7, it seemed like, for years, including the MAGA base. And now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump is annoyed when he's asked even a question about your brother. Pam Bondi lying, not releasing any of the files or any information. Don't you find it quite bizarre that this has all happened in the last few weeks? And now all of a sudden, it seems like nobody in the Trump administration wants to talk about your brother. What do you make of that?
Well, it's just like their lies are closing in on them. You know, I don't believe no one who looks at all the facts available really believes he committed suicide. It just doesn't make sense. People look at little bits and they question it and they say maybe it's a suicide. But people who have looked at a lot of the information, I can't say all because there's a lot of stuff, but people have looked at a vast majority of it. No one thinks he committed suicide. It doesn't make sense. You know, he had a hearing coming up in a few days to appeal his bail decision. Now, I knew Jeffrey as well as anybody. If he had a chance of getting bail, he would kill himself. Maybe if he had the hearing and the bail was denied, then I can see him taking himself out. And again, I always try to stress that when I first heard that Jeffrey was dead from an apparent suicide, I had no reason to doubt it. And I thought, he was in jail. He was facing a potentially long sentence. He doesn't have any children to worry about. Our parents are gone. He knew he didn't have to worry about me. So I figured, okay, he decided to take himself out. And I respected that. But then when the autopsy was done and they said it looks more like a homicide than a suicide, and Bill Barr came out with that stupid statement, I'm saying, wait a minute, this is not legit. And then we find out cameras weren't working, the guards weren't doing their job, and all these other things. And then I found out about the bail hearing coming up. I knew he had the bail thing coming up. I didn't know when, but it was relatively new. And it just doesn't make sense.
Mark, I know you're not one that likes.
I've used the example before. And they use it in court. If you go outside your house and the ground is wet and there's puddles and the cars are wet and there's water dripping off the trees, it rained. You might not have seen it raining, but it rained.
Right.
So I can't point to particular things here, but I sort of know this was not a suicide. Now,
Mark,
and then Cash Patel comes out and says, a suicide when you see it. And he states because he's a prosecutor and all sorts of other credentials. And my question is, how many suicides has he actually seen?
That's true.
And he didn't see Jeffrey's body. He wasn't at the autopsy. He wasn't at the prison. So how could he make a stupid statement like that?
That's true.
No credentials. Take Dr. Bodden. Dr. Bodden has done about 500 autopsies on prison deaths because he's been doing this for over 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Roman, I don't know how many she did, certainly more than one. And they both, in their professional opinion, would not call it a suicide because it looked too much like a homicide. So I think people are covering up. I think, obviously, Trump doesn't want to talk about it because it doesn't look good for him.
Mark, I have to ask you this. And again, I know you're not one that likes to speculate, but do you think Donald Trump knows what happened to your brother? Do you think he knows the truth?
Well, I don't like to speculate, but I'd be surprised if he knows the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
he's the president of the United States. Bill Barr was the attorney general who worked for Donald Trump. Cash Patel, the head of the FBI, who works for Donald Trump. Pam Bondi works for Donald Trump. So if they know what's going on, he certainly knows.
And, we've been told that this list was going to come out and all these Democrats were going to be on the list and all these lefties were going to be exposed, right? And now all of a sudden, Pam Bondi is saying there is no list. There's nothing to see here. Stop asking us questions. What do you make of that? I know your number one priority is you want to know the truth, what happened to your brother. And by the way, I don't blame you, and I'm on your side. I do believe he was murdered as well. I don't believe this was a suicide, just like you don't. It makes no sense to me. But don't you find it interesting that we've been hearing for years about this alleged list that was going to be released and all these people on the left that were going to be exposed, Mark? And now all of a sudden that list has disappeared. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, Jeffrey knew people on both sides of the aisle. He was a very friendly guy, and he knew lots of people. I never really thought there was any kind of list. I don't know what kind of list they were talking about. And again, I'm not a prosecutor. I'm not Jeffrey's defense attorney, so I don't get really into the charges against him. With all the things out there, that's not my job. It's not my position. I'm focusing on the circumstances of his. I used to say on his death. I now say on his murder.
What would you say to Pam Bondi if you had an opportunity to speak with her right now, Mark? What would you say to her?
Just stop bullshitting everybody.
And I would assume
that's what I would say.
I would assume you would probably say the same thing to Donald Trump, correct?
And maybe some other things too, but I would definitely say that, yeah.
Donald Trump. You guys spent some time together with your brother. Is there anything about those conversations that they had that you could share with us? Because, there were times where you guys spent time together.
Well, it wasn't a lot of time. We took a flight up together on Jeff's plane. We flew from Florida to New York, and Donald was with us. I used to fly with Jeff sort of regularly back in those days, but then stopped just because it was too inconvenient. Yeah. Because his schedule was varied. But we were on the plane. There was nothing really major or pertinent at that point in time. Yeah. Jeff and Donald were very good friends. They used to fly in each other's planes. They used to hang out together. Donald was at Jeff's office quite a bit. So, Donald comped my mother in Atlantic City and my aunts when I went there for a weekend. They were friends.
Mark,
and I know Donald's trying to distance himself, but I know they were good friends.
When Donald Trump holds a press conference, which he did the other day, and he calls your brother a pedophile, and he calls him a horrible guy, and Pam Bondi says similar things, I'm wondering what goes through your mind when the president of the United States, who was once best friends with your brother, according to your own brother's statements, constantly calls him a pedophile and these other things. What goes through your mind, Mark, when he talks about your brother like that?
Well, look, Jeffrey was guilty of being with women that were too young. I know that. Jeffrey admitted that. So I don't have a problem that they go with pedophile, but I guess by definition you could say that. And again, that's not my concern. My concern was his murder. You know, that's really what I'm focusing on.
I hope you get the truth, Mark. I really do. I'm on your side. I think the Trump administration has a lot to hide. I don't believe that he took his own life. And just proof of that is, like you said, a couple days he had a court appearance where hopefully he was going to be able to get out on bail, or at least he had the opportunity to. And I think that speaks volumes. It doesn't make any sense to me, Mark. Listen, I'm sorry for what you
just be aware the bail he was offering would have been the highest bail in the United States history by about 50% higher than the previous highest bail ever. Mm-hmm. So there was maybe a chance he got bail. Because look, in all reality, as distasteful as it might have been to some people, Jeffrey was not yet convicted of anything this time around. Yeah. So he was still innocent by definition, and you're entitled to bail in most cases if you can, satisfy the court's requirements. So Mark, there's a chance he could have got bail and he'd be home, living with an ankle bracelet and guards and cameras, but he wouldn't be in the jail.
I don't know if we're ever going to get the truth, Mark. Certainly you deserve it. Your family deserves it. I don't know if we're ever going to get the truth. We're certainly not going to get it when Donald Trump is president of the United States. That's for sure. I think that's already been proven. Listen, Mark, I appreciate your time, my friend.
Well, do me a favor. Look at the pictures I sent you.
I will.
You'll see the entrance to the tier. It's up the steps. You'll see the tier, and you'll see the cell door. Now, Jeff's cell door went in the tier, just so you know, is off to the right when you look at that picture. So his cell door is not visible in that picture of the tier, right? Because there are 4 cells on each side of the tier. Jeffrey's the first one, and that's cut off in that photograph. But that's the tier, and you could recognize that tier through the door when you look up the first photograph.
And that just gives us more.
And that's his cell door. So when they say they had photographs of the cell door, you tell me if you've seen that cell door.
No, they're lying.
Any of the videos?
They're lying. No, I can tell you right now, based on what you showed me, this video, they're lying. They're not showing the correct camera angle of your brother's cell. There's a minute that's missing. It shows absolutely nothing, and it proves that they're hiding something. Mark, I'm on your side 100%.
Well, here's another. One other thing about the videos. After Jeffrey's death, and Bill Barr referred to the video showing nobody went in or out of the tier, and that convinced him of the suicide. I asked for the footage from that camera from 10 o'clock at night until noon the next morning, because since Bill Barr said it showed the door that nobody went in or out of, it would have shown when the last people left that tier about 10:30 at night when they locked it up, and it would have shown when Michael Thomas went in the morning about 6:30 to serve breakfast when he found Jeffrey's body, and it would have shown them taking Jeffrey's body off of the tier. It would show who was there, who was involved, maybe who was running the show. Why did they move a dead body when they're not supposed to until the medical examiner comes? There's just so many questions here, so many things that were done wrong, that just to say that this was a suicide and write it off as that is just foolhardy.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Makes no sense.
Makes no sense to me either, Mark. And you deserve the answers. Mark, I always appreciate it when you do this show. I really do, my friend. And we'll talk soon, brother. And if you have any other information you want to share with us, please let me know, okay?
Just look at those photographs. That's plenty of information right there.
Yes, that is true.
What I'm talking about.
That is true, and we will definitely show those. Mark, I appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you very much.
Be well. Stay safe.
Thank you. Mark Epstein, everybody. That's the brother of Jeffrey Epstein. I was just going to say, I have to ask you this. This obviously happened under the Donald Trump first administration. I know this is speculation. I understand that. But with that being said, do you believe that there is a possibility that either Donald Trump or somebody in his administration close in his orbit could have been a part of your brother's demise behind bars?
Well, I look at it this way. Again, I'm reluctant to speculate. I like looking at facts. Bill Barr was the Attorney General of the United States at the time. Bill Barr worked for Donald Trump. Bill Barr came out with that ridiculous statement, which led me to believe initially that it's a cover-up. Until that point in time, I believed that he killed himself. And then there's a lot of other facts that are not general knowledge. In a few days after the death, Jeffrey had a hearing scheduled to appeal the bail decision. Okay, and the bail was being substantially raised. So, maybe unlikely, there's maybe a chance he could have got bail, because it would have been the highest bail ever in the United States.
Right.
That was coming up in a few days. Now, knowing Jeffrey, if he knew this hearing was coming up and he was thinking about killing himself, wouldn't you wait a few days? Because if he got the bail, he'd be living in his house, with armed guards and an ankle monitor and cameras. he wouldn't have to languish in jail for a year. You know, if the hearing came up and bail was denied again, I said, okay, he didn't want to be a year in jail, so he killed himself. More understandable. But why would you kill yourself a few days before?
Doesn't make sense.
Trying to post the highest bail in U.S. history.
It's a really good point, Mark, you bring up. Mark, are you in fear of your life that if you're out there and you continue to push for answers, which, by the way, I don't blame you for doing so, are you in fear of your life? Or are you in fear that people will be out to get you because of who your brother was and the fact that you're questioning, the FBI deputy director? Are you in fear for your life?
No, I'm not really in fear of my life. I mean, I'm not. This is why I don't appear on camera anywhere. I don't need people. I travel a lot. I don't need being somewhere with people, recognizing me. But I'm not in fear of my life. No. At the early stages, with the death threats, I was in touch with the New York City Police Department and the FBI. But I'm not really in fear of my life.
Last question, Mark, and I really do appreciate your time. What do you think is the biggest misconception by the general public and the media when it comes to your brother, when it comes to your family, anything? What is like the biggest issue that you have that people think about your family or think about your brother that you would want to set the record straight?
I've been asked that a number of times, and I said before, I don't feel it's my job to defend my brother, because he did things he shouldn't have been doing. I'm not trying to say he was an angel, but I don't want to get into the character stuff or the family stuff.
Sure.
I'm just concerned about, I think my brother was killed, and I just don't want somebody just getting away from it scot-free.
I'm with you on that 150%. Your questions deserve answers, by the way. Do you think you'll ever get them? You think you'll ever get these answers?
Likely not, but I want the questions out there.
Yeah.
We still don't know everything about JFK, right? It's 60 years later.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Have you ever been in the same room and hung out with Donald Trump and your brother Jeffrey Epstein? And if you did, what was that like? That had to be kind of interesting. What was that like? Can I ask you this just to start? What was your first reaction yesterday when you heard that Elon Musk put out this tweet claiming that Donald Trump is, quote, all over the Epstein files? What was your reaction to that, Mark, being Jeffrey's brother?
Well, my first question is, which Epstein files are they talking about? Are they talking about the files related to the charges against him, or are they talking about the files related to his murder? There's two sets of files, in a sense. And, so if it's the files about his charges, well, back in the 90s and that period of time, they were very good friends. They spent a lot of time together. Trump was in Jeffrey's office quite a lot. They used to fly in each other's planes to and from Florida. So, I mean, I wasn't there, but I know that, Jeffrey would tell me things, and they were good friends back then. Those files. So I don't know what's going to be in those files. I mean, we also have seen the photographs of them together in different settings. But then there's the file of the murder. Okay. Right. I mean, the Justice Department report is filled with inaccuracies, and it's obviously a cover-up. So was Trump involved with that? A lot of people think that, and they tell me they think that Trump had Jeffrey killed to shut him up, because I do know Jeffrey had dirt on Trump. I don't know what he knew, but he told me he had dirt on Trump.
So your brother,
to have the Justice Department cover it up, who else can do something like that?
What can you tell us about that? So you're saying, Mark, that you've had conversations with your late brother, Jeffrey Epstein, and Jeffrey Epstein told you that he, quote, had dirt on Donald Trump. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I've already said in the past that in the 2016 election, Jeffrey said that if he said what he knew about both candidates, they'd have to cancel the election.
Wow. Do you believe that was illegal activity that he had?
I don't know what it was, but it was enough that Jeffrey thought they'd have to cancel the election. He said, I don't know what the information was, but Jeffrey wouldn't say something like that to me unless he had information that would be damaging.
So, Mark, do you believe that information that your brother Jeffrey told you that he had on Donald Trump could be the reason why your brother is not alive today?
Yes, I believe that.
Wow. Well, that's so. What Elon Musk said, it's fair to say that you think there could be a lot of relevance. Do you think Elon Musk knows something that the general public does not know?
I think so. I don't know why else he would come out with a statement like that.
Because that would be a blatant lie that could be easily proven. Do you believe that the reason why Pam Bondi and Donald Trump's administration has not released the Epstein files is because it's damning and Donald Trump's name is, quote, all over it?
I really don't want to speculate. I don't know why it's not being released. I mean, that's a possibility, but that's not my call to make.
Right. No, I certainly understand that. But do you think, in a sense, this is a positive that it sheds more light and maybe you'll get a little bit more information? I don't know if you will, about what happened to your brother behind bars.
I hope we can, but it's been an uphill battle because, like I said, it's obviously a cover up.
Mhm.
Because if you took the time to read the Justice Department report that came out 4 years after the death, there's a lot of things in there that's just bullshit.
Mhm.
Like it says, they notified me after the death. They never notified me after the death. I heard about it on CNN.
Right.
I was having breakfast, and boom, I hear on CNN that
That's horrible.
Jeffrey was dead.
That's horrible.
Yeah,
That's not
so,
the way you want to find out.
there's,
Yeah.
there's no mention in the official report that the initial autopsy showed that it looked more like a homicide than a suicide. Those results have been glossed over. It's not even mentioned.
Yeah.
They just said that the chief pathologist called it a suicide, and she never saw the body.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of shenanigans going on there and a lot of people withholding a lot of information. If you're just joining us, his name is Mark Epstein. He is the brother of the late Jeffrey Epstein, joining us right now on the line. So, Mark, I'm sure you've been asked this question before. You hear about the term Epstein Island. Do you believe Donald Trump was ever on Epstein Island with your brother?
I have no idea. I really don't know.
Have you ever been in the same room and hung out with Donald Trump and your brother Jeffrey Epstein? And if you did, what was that like? That had to be kind of interesting. What was that like?
The only time the three of us were together was back in 1999, and I flew up from Florida with Jeff, and Donald was on the plane with us. That's the only time. And then it was just like a funny thing. I mean, Donald was a funny guy. Jeffrey always said he was funny. And, we were talking just, that's the only time we ever spent together.
Why do you think that friendship kind of ended? Because from what I understand is that your brother and Trump, their relationship wasn't so great the last several years of his life. What do you know about that?
Well, I know Jeffrey said he stopped hanging out with Donald when he realized Trump was a crook. That's a quote. That's what he said.
Interesting. And because you hear a lot of stuff from MAGA world that Trump didn't want to hang out with your brother because of maybe the alleged shenanigans that your brother was involved with. Do you believe that to be a lie? And you're saying that it was your brother that actually did not want to hang out with Donald Trump.
Well, I told you what I know. I told you the last time. I don't like to speculate.
Sure.
I like to stick with facts. And Jeffrey said that he stopped hanging out with Donald when he realized that he was a crook. I don't know what Donald's side of the story is. I wasn't there. I can't corroborate what Donald might say, but I can tell you what my brother said.
Understood. Mark, what would you say to so many MAGA Republicans out there that are, I would use the term cultist when it comes to Donald Trump? They say, nope, Donald Trump did no wrong. He had nothing to do with your brother's death. He wasn't hanging out with your brother at all. They weren't really friends. And this is all nonsense. Elon Musk is a liar. I'm curious, Mark, what would you say to those people?
I really wouldn't say anything to them because, people who, they always say people are entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. Yeah, and people who work on their own facts, they're impossible to convince. So it's a waste of time to try to convince them because, I could tell them to read the Justice Department report, look at the discrepancies in it, but they're not going to. So it's sort of like, you can't convince them that they're wrong or that they have their opinions are not facts. So, it would be a waste of time. And that's not my job.
Sure.
That's not my position. Yeah.
Do you think in the next 3.5 years anyway, do you think the Epstein files will ever be released? Do you think you'll ever get the answers that you're looking for and the American people will?
I have no idea. I wish we do, but I can't predict. Yeah.
Well, Mark, listen, I appreciate your time. I'm sorry with what you've had to go through in your family. You deserve the answers, and I do appreciate you coming on and joining us. And we'll see how this thing plays out. But I was surprised, as I'm sure you were, when you saw that Elon Musk tweeted this out about Donald Trump. Right? I mean, I certainly didn't see this coming. I don't think you did either. Right?
No, I didn't. It was a surprise. I was busy all day yesterday. I found out about it when a number of journalists called me to get my reaction to it, and I didn't know what they were talking about at first. They're acting like children. Right. Let me fix that because there's a lot of wonderful children out there that anybody would be proud to be parents of. They're acting like spoiled brat kids. The kind of kids that get sent away to military schools to get some discipline in them. Yeah.
No, I understand that. This is some crazy times that we are living in. I hope you get the answers that you deserve, Mark. And I do appreciate you coming back on the show and being honest with us. It means a lot. And I can imagine you have a lot of people that want to talk to you. So I really do appreciate you coming on, Mark. And I wish you the best, my friend. Thank you so much for coming on.